Hello, welcome back to Three Bridges. I'm Mark, and this is the next update of my model railway building in my loft. So, if you saw the last one, this time the bench was all covered in the framework for the Moor Park Amersham section, and that's all gone up to the loft now, and I'm just assembling it together. There's not really much to show up there. So, down here, I'm working back on the Uxbridge station, the next level up, and doing the platforms and the sides. But what I'm going to do for this episode is introduce you to what I'm going to do for the background of Moor Park Station. And I'll start off where I built some Scale Scenics flats. I know a lot of people talk about you sort of get a bit burnt out from doing the modelling at certain phases and need to take a break. I suffer the same. It's not burnout. It's more just the list to do just gets to the point where you got to work out if you're going left or right, or up or down. And so sometimes I find it a bit easier to just go and make a scale scenes building for a day, because it just allows you to forget about everything else, focus on some instructions, and you get a product out at the end of it, which can go on the layout. And I quite enjoy building them. The scale scenes flat I needed to build, and I'll explain why. So I hope you enjoy the episode. It's slightly different to the others, but I am sort of working up in the loft, and I'll show you what I've done up there when I've got something to show. So hope you enjoy the episode, and maybe I'll catch you next time when I do more of an update from the loft later in September. I had to go building this. This is the low relief flats from Scale Scenes. I did it for two reasons. So when I get around to building How on the Hill, I need some buildings to go at the back just to show the sort of height of the background buildings that you have around How on the Hill. And this seemed like an ideal one to use. And I also need to create a sort of similar flat structure. I also need to create a flat. I need to create a flat structure at Moor Park. I'll explain that one now. So to build Moor Park Station, I sort of went to Google Earth first, sort of see what's around, and I'll give you an idea of where it's located. So this is the station in the middle. It has quite a short platform, although there was probably a longer platform in the past. So it's just from here to here, and then this is the covered area, which I'll show you in a later clip, where you basically access underneath the station. If I zoom in a bit closer, I should show you. That's the station entrance, and then from there you access a tunnel underneath that allows you to get up onto the platform. And again, from the rear you can access underneath the platforms into it. The entrances themselves, they're not the most glamorous of locations. So this is the rear entrance to Moor Park. So it's on level with the platform behind, and you go downstairs through the tunnel and back up. Looks like the entrance to a dodgy gents toilets to me, so I won't be creating. And then this is the front entrance, which again just reminds me of a scout hut I probably went to in my youth, and again it didn't really excite me, so I decided to create my own station building. But for the main part of this video, we're talking about back scene buildings that I'm going to create, the flats to the side of Moor Park. And the issue you have with Moor Park is, I go to Google Earth. So when you turn on the Street View map, you can see that because it's a private estate, Google Earth cars are not allowed to enter it. So there's very little image is available of what the actual location around the station looks like. There's the platforms and the station buildings on the platforms. So they're very much in the Art Deco sort of style of the time. And these ones are almost like Corbusier style buildings with a very simple canopy over the top and these green poles holding it up. So one of them is steps up, and then there's a small waiting room. So obviously there's two platforms to service the two Chiltern lines and then the two underground lines. but I'm actually only having my underground line come to Moor Park, so I'll just have one platform, and there'll be sort of 3 structures that I'll create underneath the canopy, but I'll show that in a later episode. Okay, what I'm trying to show you, so this is the station entrance. There's the usual parking bay by front of the station, and then there's a line of shops that run away from the station, sort of the view up the hill. So from the train you can sort of see this street view with the road and then the shops. And obviously on my layout I don't have the luxury of depth, so I literally have to bring whatever I'm going to build here to be almost behind the station. So what I'm proposing to do is recreate a sort of Moor Park shopping centre that sits actually on this side of the view, so which will run along here, and then I'll have my station building in front, and then as I look from the scene over here across a car park, that'll be the view. I was thinking about what to create for the shots behind. I didn't quite want to have more. There's a lot of brickwork already on the layout, and the buildings that you can see looking down into Moor Park Village is very much a sort of 1930s brick structure. It's not really inspiring. But I remember back to one particular journey I was taking back from London in my early 20s, and I'd seen an amazing Art Deco White House somewhere, either in London or on the railway line as it was coming out. And as I pulled into Moor Park, it just got me thinking, what a shame they hadn't made the village structure a bit more interesting. It's all sort of very mock Tudor style on the estate, and I was just thinking at the time it would look amazing if it was more of a white Art Deco style shopping centre. It'd be more impressive. Anyway, thoughts get parked, don't they? And then years later, so 40 years later, while I was thinking about what to build at Moor Park, that memory popped back into my head. And so I started looking on Google Earth for Art Deco buildings in London for some inspiration. And I stumbled across a place called Hartington Court, which is on the Thames. So this is the Thames River. You're just around Chiswick area, so you're going west from the centre of London up the river. And as you can see, it's this amazing Art Deco style. It's almost like a ship liner structure, sort of curved windows at the edges, the white balconies, sort of central. Probably is a lift in there because it's got the height for it, but it's probably also a stair tower around a central lift. And it was sort of 3 or 4 stories high, so I could see a way that I could adapt this sort of structure to make something as my backdrop for Moor Park. So the first thing I did was just come up with a simple sketch, very much taking most of the components from the Hartington Court building. I'll show you that now. When I'm starting with ideas for the layout, I usually start with a small sketch just to get an idea in my head of what I'm trying to achieve. So obviously this is one I took, I'm suspecting sort of spring 2023, so we were probably still living down in the Midlands, packing up to move up to Yorkshire. So, and obviously at that point I had no idea what the layout was going to be like, where it was going to be, any sort of size, so I didn't really worry about what was going to happen. And so the view I'd envisaged, so these would have been the Chiltern lines passing in front of the station, my underground lines, and obviously at that point I envisaged it very much like at Moor Park is at the moment, so with the main station building behind, and then obviously you've got this street view where the shops currently are, and then obviously then I was creating these flats in front either side just to give a bit more of a scenic background. Obviously, so what I've now thinking of is changing quite a lot of that, but that sort of initial idea from the that London Harrington Court, sort of with the towers either side, or some sort of arrangement like that was my initial inspiration. So from there I go on to doing basically a drawing to get some idea of the scale of the Harrington Court. So using Google Earth image of Harrington Court, I've basically just drawn up to dimensions what I envisage sort of one wing would look like, and the tower. It just gives me some measurements to work with, so that when I start creating the design in Inkscape, I've got a rough idea of, door size, window size of the balcony, tower, and those sort of things that I can sort of reference back to this sketch. So that's the basic sketch. I'll go to Inkscape and then show you what I drew up. Right, so I've opened up Inkscape. So if you follow it, the free application software Michael Chanwell uses a lot. So this was back in my very early days of it. I still haven't really progressed a lot further. The whole thing is just made up of squares. I'm not very good at doing other shapes yet, and so it's quite easy to put this together. So having used that basic drawing that I'd created, I had some reference for the size of each story and the tower, and then I basically just adapted it a little bit further with how it's sort of looking on the screen. So I probably spent about 4 or 5 hours once I'd got the initial shape of this created. I sort of went down a rabbit hole one evening for about 4 or 5 hours, and architecting, you start envisaging, well, how much would this flat here need as a reasonable space, and what happens around the corner and around the back of the building, and obviously I've got the shops down the side. So this thing started to grow from this initial image, and if I bring it out, I can remember how to do it. So I've then gone around the corner, so that's down the side of the building, and you've got more entrances, and envisaging the penthouse suite with the balcony view out the back. And then if you go the other direction, you would have 5 shops, and again the flat structure sort of terracing down. Again, try to keep that ocean liner sort of feel about it. And I even got as far as even imagining what would happen around the back of the flats. So bathroom windows out, so these sort of start to wrap back in and around, so it becomes a sort of C-shape type building if you would look down on it from above. Obviously totally impractical, but a lot of fun to do. And I think at a later date I even started to think about what would happen over the other side of the street, and so this tower would actually be on the corner position. I'll show you in a minute with some mock-ups what I meant by that. So they again would run parallel with the railway line, and then the shops would be, so this building would be L-shaped and the other one sort of C-shaped. So having sort of drawn it all out to scale in Inkscape, then the easiest thing to do is to print it out as always and see how sort of physically large it looks. So I've got a couple of images of what it started to look like. Obviously this is back in, as I say, February, March 2023. So this is just starting with a few static images. So this was the sort of first building, sort of printed out on paper, just to give you some idea of the scale of it. And if I move across, so that's with both sides. So as you can see, I've got this one with the tower on a corner. In this one I've got the flats going this side and the shops are around the front. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to change it or if the shops would be going here. To give some scale, that's the front of the station that will be built, and then you've got a figure and a car. Now obviously at this point, as I said, no idea where the layout's going to be, no idea how much depth I've got. So obviously in depth I would need, what is this, about a mat, so 30 to 40 centimeters deep to be able to sort of create this part of the scene as a backdrop, but obviously I haven't got that. I have got a centimetre or two. Right, so where does that leave me? So what I've been thinking about, so obviously I've got this 1 or 2 centimetres behind, it's literally 1 centimetre if I'm totally honest with you, behind where the station will sit on the slight rise incline. And obviously behind whatever I'm going to create here will be the incline down of the East Coast and West Coast line, which I'm wanting to hide. So this building will do a great job in sort of hiding that incline that goes at the very back of this part of the layout. And what I've thought I could do is I can make the front parts of the two buildings with the terraces, hence the reason why at the very beginning of this clip I had a go at making the scale scenes flat scene, so because it shows me how to do very quickly make the balconies and stuff like that, and I don't really have to try and think it all through. It sort of helps you do it. But what I'm then thinking I could do is if I could try and create this sort of scene with the shops this side and the shops this side. There were trees in the background, but what I was wondering if I could actually physically build them, these two sides to the buildings, and do some scenics as like a more simple scenic creation off the layout. I then photograph it and somehow put it in as a backdrop in that part of the layout. That was the idea, because of obviously these towers are white balconies with the bricks. If the whole thing was white, I could probably take it from the mock-up and just do it that way. So I might try it with the mock-up first, just to see if that would work. It's only going to be a very small section of the backdrop, and just to sort of create some false perspective, I'll give it a go. So and play around with. But there's been a few videos of people doing false perspective for backdrops, so I'll have a look at those, and they've often taken them from an image and then sort of distorted it. But I was thinking effectively it's just an image at the front. We'll have a go. So what I'm going to move to next episode will be the actual building of these two structures, and I'll do it as a one episode of how I've taken the inkscape into a physical building. But I think I'll end this one with, I'll just show you with the two flat mock-ups I've got how they would sit behind the station up in the loft as I've currently got it, so you can get some idea of what I'm trying to create, and also I can sort of see if it does actually work and is it tall enough to hide the incline behind it. So let's see how that looks in the loft.